anyone that might be listening that doesn't already have an understanding of what accessible yoga really means and where it's come from, and maybe even speak to where you feel it's going. I love that you said underground movement of yoga, because I think that's just what yoga needs at this point,
Yeah.
at least in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main thing I would say is that, to me, the essence of yoga is already accessible. And, it's a spiritual practice that is about connecting with the truth of who we are. And that's available to anyone, who wants it. So I just I'm interested in changing the perception a little bit about accessible yoga to be not so much about this effort people are making to be, quote, inclusive, which I think is kind of a little weird. It's not that. It's about getting to the heart of yoga. And the heart of yoga is that, we all share that. We all share that place, whatever that is, however you want to identify it, of spirit or God, whatever that is to you. And to me, yoga is about really connecting with that place for each of us. And you don't have to call it yoga. Everyone has their own way. But to me, I call it yoga. And it's a group of amazingly powerful practices that have changed my life. And I want to share it with anyone else who's interested. But I guess I just get a little frustrated because I think, accessible yoga, it's almost like a niche or something like, a specialty. And I don't see it that way. I don't think that's what it's about. It's just like, what is the essence of this practice and how do you convey that well? And I think that's the other thing I'm really interested in is training yoga teachers. I've been doing that for a long time. I led probably like 30 200-hour trainings. That used to be my main job.
Wow.
And like, I saw what was going on, like the good and bad of it. Like I love teacher training, but I also see kind of where we fail. And to me, a lot of the failure is around making that transition from theory to implementation to practice, and really giving teachers really tangible tools they can use and skills they can use to teach more effectively. And that's kind of where I'm at. But to answer your question also about the history, I would just say that, my personal background was as an AIDS activist. And, my best friend died of AIDS in 1995. And like, that is basically that's the same year I finished one of my teacher training programs and myself. And I was just like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. Like, it was so clear to me. I was already demonstrating and marching, on the streets. And I was like, wait, I can actually just share this practice that I love with my community. And that's what I did.
And now that practice is being shared with lots of maybe what we consider these niche communities, where there's yoga for survivors of any illness, yoga for recovery, veterans, LGBTQ organization, our youth, our educators, our first responders, right? We could go on and on and on for every niche market that would benefit from studying these practices.
Yeah.
And although you gear the teacher training in Providence to teachers with a 200-hour credential at this point, what about school teachers or therapists, healers that are using yoga meditation practices, the breathing techniques already with their clients? Would they benefit from attending in Providence?
Yeah, I open the training to anyone who's interested. I do focus on yoga teachers because that's my background, but I do offer skills that I think are effective for anyone sharing yoga or who wants to. I often get a lot of PTs, OTs, recreational therapists, people like that who generally are working with movement or with disability, like those communities are usually there. But even school teachers, I think, could benefit a lot. But I would say that I still recommend anyone who wants to teach yoga that they take a 200-hour. This is a 30-hour weekend. It's not enough just alone to train someone to teach yoga.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's useful in terms of expanding skills for people that aren't going to be just teaching yoga and just want to add it to their curriculum.
you're really at that juncture, that crossroads of therapy and yoga.
Yeah, in a way, I think yoga therapy is almost like a subset of yoga. To me, I'm interested in just sharing yoga more broadly, and yeah, and making it accessible in general. And like one example I give for yoga therapy versus accessible yoga is that if someone has a disability or a chronic illness, sometimes they just want to go to a yoga class. That doesn't mean that they have to seek out therapy all the time. And I feel like yoga teachers need to be trained better so that whoever walks in the door or rolls in the door can participate in that class and feel part of that experience without having to go in as kind of the patient or client all the time, but just allowing people with disabilities in particular or other marginalized communities to begin to be integrated into yoga spaces. That's what I'm really interested in, as almost like as a social justice question too. Because I think sometimes the yoga communities tend to be very kind of, white and well-off, mostly women. And I think it's important to address that, just like we address social issues in the larger culture, and how certain communities are generally marginalized because of race or class or gender identity or sexual orientation. I mean, to me, these are all related. And I guess that's a big part of accessible yoga to me, is really trying to make those spaces equitable, you know.